Howdy folks, Scanner here, video 5 of the series about the factions in Trench Crusade. If you're looking at me and thinking, wow, he's wearing like identically what he was wearing in the Beelzebub Black Grail video, what a dirtbag, it's like 2 hours later. I'm trying to record the last 3 in the same night so I can get them all edited up and good to go before the Kickstarter. So, let's talk about New Antioch, who are really a pain in my ass because I thought aesthetically I wouldn't like a lot of their sculpts, but I really do. Like, I really do. Despite them being, in essence, the most straight-laced of all the factions visually, its armor, its guns, it's, for the most part, people. But god damn it, the sculpts are clean. Even the yeoman sculpts are so much nicer than I thought they would be. I thought I'd never have to think about yeoman, but like rule of cool, they look really good. So let's talk about New Antioch and what they are and what to do. So New Antioch is basically rebuilt Antioch, which was destroyed by reputedly infernal means, which for all intents and purposes looks like a nuke was dropped on old Antioch, or nuke adjacent weapon. So maybe a big bomb witch or something, an uber bomb witch got to them, who knows, back in the day. And they rebuilt New Antioch. New Antioch exists very much at the forefront of the war with Hell. It is right there on the border of no man's land. Nothing gets past as far as they're concerned. They've got big walls, they've got fortifications, they've got the support of the rest of the world, who sends them all kinds of supplies and tithe, basically. So all of Christendom sends to New Antioch soldiers, money, food, ammunition, weapons, armaments of every kind, priests, lots of blessing of everything. And generally there's a very rich mix of society in New Antioch. It's not like it's some kind of barren, drab military base or anything like that. It is an enormous city. It is a massive society unto itself. So that's a very kind of an interesting thing. The easiest thing to think about it, and I hate even saying this, is think about it as being behind the wall in Attack on Titan, right? Life can't stop just because there's a threat outside. And if anything, it's spitting in the eye of said threat to keep a degree of normalcy going. So ultimately, the function of New Antioch is to stop the wall, or stop the war with the wall, stop the march of Hell whenever that occurs, to be the tip of the spear, very literally, in the defense of mankind. You can't do that unless people know what they're fighting for. Unless the people on the wall, unless the people in the trenches, unless the people out in no man's land have a reason to fight, they're not going to. They're not going to fight. And faith is ultimately family, I think, for many people. And I don't see that being so different with regards to what is occurring in the Trench Crusade universe and how things are going down in and around New Antioch. So New Antioch is ruled by the Duke, who is the be-all and end-all of authority within New Antioch. They've got the Duke's Corps of Engineers. They've got the Synod of Strategic Prophecy. They've got the Church. They've got everything that you can imagine, basically, is set up there to repel attackers from Hell, and they literally get people dropping in from all over the world. So they're highly militarized, and in essence, everyone who goes there will to a degree fall into that kind of concept of being, part of the Duke's army and stuff, and they'll wear some of the armor, they'll wear some of the colors, maybe they'll do whatever. But many of them will have a degree of individuality to what it is that they do, and that's shown by the amount of variants that New Antioch have. I think they've got the most variants in the game. So let's do what we always do and run through the equipment list and see if there's anything cool in here to kind of talk about or touch on. And for the most part, they're pretty standard is an interesting word, but they're what is actually interesting about them is not so much the equipment, but rather the fact that they can form fire teams. So you can form up to 2 fire teams from models in the Warband, not allies or mercenaries. Each fire team consists of 2 models. The models gain the keyword fire team, and fire teams can basically be activated together. So if you want to activate one, you can activate the other one straight away. You don't have to pass it back and anything like that. And I've threatened a video specifically covering fire teams, which I will get around to. But let's just dive in. The lieutenant. So these guys rule the roost. They can be, depending on your whim for your warband, they can be there by merit, or they can be there potentially through a little bit of nepotism, whatever you want. New Antioch isn't above nepotism, because generally speaking, if somebody is where they're not supposed to be, they won't stay there for very long. The forces of the Infernal will see to that. But for the most part, the vast majority of the lieutenants are going to be people who very much deserve their spot. It's just you could write a kind of a wuss guy if you wanted to. You could have somebody who was carried more by their squad than their own self if you wanted to go that way for your particular warband. I don't see why you would, but it's not outside the realm of possibility. So lieutenants are really interesting because they really kind of take ownership and responsibility for their warbands in really kind of interesting ways. In lore, they'll like haggle with the quartermasters and the engineers so that their guys can have the best possible stuff, and all that kind of stuff. Exactly what you would think of with regards to armed forces, like currying favor within a strict machine to get yourself some leeway, which is pretty cool. So they have, my cat is still around the place. So they have 2 dice range, +2 melee, 32mm base. Pretty much as we've touched on already for 70 ducats, that standard leadership profile. And after that, it's how you build them. They've got tough, so that's pretty cool. And they've got on my command. Once per turn, immediately after they are activated as an action, the lieutenant can instead force the opponent to activate one of their models that the lieutenant can select from amongst the models they can see. The lieutenant can then be activated later in the same turn as normal. Doesn't sound hugely impactful, but is a massive pain in the ass, because almost every turn of Trench Crusade I have played settles down to a single linchpin move on both sides, with everything else backing up that move. And if you force somebody to activate out of turn before they want to, it can scupper their entire plan. It is a super strong thing. Don't let that kind of pass by how impactful that can be. You can waste a unit's turn almost entirely by forcing it to activate. If something is set up to ambush, if something is set up to kind of back something else up, if something is set up to go second in any capacity, you can really fucking ruin someone's day by activating their stuff. Can you tell it's happened to me? Can you feel the bitterness in my voice? Okay, Trench Clerics. I have a big soft spot for these dudes. These guys are extremely faithful, extremely pious. They're kind of, capable of manifesting, let's call them mini miracles, in a way. So they've got a 6-inch movement, they've got +1 ranged, +1 melee. They can be equipped with anything from the equipment list. They've got the abilities God is with us. Select one friendly model within 6 inches of the priest, including the priest, and take a risky action. If successful, the model immediately gains a blessings marker. Blessing markers are used to improve your own dice rolls, basically. They're the anti-blood markers, for want of a better term. They can also have onward Christian soldiers. If the cleric makes a successful action roll, all friendly models within that are within 8 inches of the trench cleric are not affected by fear for the rest of their activation. That can be really upsetting if you're the Black Grail that relies heavily on the negative impacts of fear to fuck things up for the opponent. So it's a very strong thing, and because it's within 8 inches, so 8-inch radius, 16-inch diameter, you can have a good presence. You know, if you're central or close to the main hammer of the army, you can have a real impact if you're there. So it can become really useful if you fire team up a cleric with a trench cleric with a shock trooper, and not waste any time when it goes off and get that shock trooper straight into business, basically, with whatever it is you're fighting that can cause fear. It can be very useful. Okay, sniper priests. You can have up to 2 sniper priests, which is interesting. I don't think I've ever played into anybody or watched anybody play who took 2 sniper priests, which is kind of interesting. These guys are basically blind. They choose to be blind as an example of their faith. So they're a blind sniper. They're trusting that God is going to get them shooting in the right place. And you know what? Most of the time, God fucking does. So what else are you going to do? They have a 6-inch movement. They have a +2 ranged, -1 to melee, because God doesn't care about their ability to stab stuff. 25mm base. They can be equipped with essentially with any weapon, armor, or equipment from the new Antioch equipment list. But like, you kind of want to give them a sniper rifle, or something, you know, with really good range on it, so they can be a pain in the ass. They've got these abilities. Aim. A sniper priest may take a risky action to aim. If successful, then the priest may add +2 dice to any ranged attack rolls during the same activation. So pretty pretty impactful right there. And absolute faith. Sniper priests do not use their eyesight to aim at their enemies. The opponent cannot apply any blood markers when they use a ranged weapon. They still suffer penalties for ranged and cover as standard. So you can't, even if they've got blood markers on them, like, it's not going to be eroded. Their probability of landing isn't going to be fucked with just because they've got some blood markers, which is pretty cool. Now, I've also never really seen sniper priests stick around long enough after taking a bit of damage, because what will normally happen is people will send something fast and melee based after it and hack it up. That is generally speaking the way to go, or drop a bomb on it, or something of that nature. So you do want to position very smartly and very well to keep them alive and in the fight. Okay, yeomen. These are like the standard trooper. They're 30 ducats, and you have to buy a bolt action for them at the cost of 10 ducats, so 40 ducats total. If you want to, you can equip them with something else, and if it costs more, you pay the difference, but if it costs less, you don't get anything back. So it's just kind of a little interesting element of them. And if you really want to, you can pay +10 ducats for up to 2 yeomen to be turned into trench moles, and they have infiltrator. So they have 0 ranged, 0 melee stats. They're as standard as it comes for Trench Crusade, the game. It's all about how you build them. Like 0-0 isn't bad, right? Because you're still getting a two dice roll to potentially win, but you want to play into some kind of strength. So they're going to have their bolt action, which is fine. But just consider, are things going to be charging at you? Are things going to be close to you? Stuff like that. Maybe give them trench clubs. Give them things that like increase their options without spending an insane amount of money on them. You probably want to give them some kind of armor. In general, you want everything in New Antioch to be armored up. You want them to be tough to get rid of. not tough as in the keyword, but you want them to be, you know, annoying to get rid of. You want to give them a good option because there's a surprising amount of shit coming their way, basically. Alrighty. Shock troopers. Now you can have up to 5 shock troopers in your warband. They are, for want of a better word, slightly better yeomen. They have a 6-inch movement, 0 range dice, +1 to melee for 45 ducats. They have shock charge. When a shock trooper charges, roll 2d6 instead of 1d6, and then you add the highest of the dice to their charge. So once again, it's not a guaranteed charge, but your probability of success is very good. And then they have assault to drill. Shock troopers ignore the effect of the keyword heavy on melee weapons. The shock trooper can still only carry a single heavy item unless they are strong. So basically what that's telling you is you have free reign to take a heavy melee weapon should you want to. And generally speaking, you should want to. Like that. How am I gonna describe this? If you're taking a shock trooper and you're not leaning into the whole reason as to why you would take a shock trooper in the first place, which is melee, why are you doing it? And if you're not going to do it in a cool, characterful way, why are you doing it? I mean, I realize everybody wants to min-max the shit out of their lists and stuff, but you also need to have fun. You also have to play with character. And sometimes losing is as fun, especially in a campaign, as winning. Like, I know people are going to turn their nose up at that. You should, you know, always like play to win and stuff. If only for your opponent, you should always play to win because they will want a good game, not like a gimme or whatever. But I would rather lose an exciting game that's fun with 2 characterful forces clashing with actual personality than win a boring fucking game. That has always been my stance on things. Okay, sidetracking. Always sidetracking. Sorry, folks. Combat engineers. For 80 ducats, these guys are expensive. Don't get me wrong, but they're good. 6-inch movement, arranged of +1 dice, melee of +0 dice, built-in armor, basically. They have engineer body armor, grants a -2 modifier to injury rolls made against the combat engineer that is included in the combat engineer's profile and price point. All weapons with the shrapnel, or with the keyword shrapnel, suffer -1 dice on all injuries against the combat engineer, and shrapnel attacks do not cause extra blood markers on a model wearing this suit. The effects relating to shrapnel work even against attacks that ignore armor. Jesus Christ, I'm struggling to read. It's quite late. So, abilities wise, they've got battlefield demolition. The engineer ignores heavy rules for satchel charges. They've got fortify. During their activation, an engineer can take a risky action with a +1 dice. If successful, the engineer is considered to be in cover until the model moves. This action cannot be used if the model is in melee combat. So you're going to be difficult to hit, you're going to be difficult to injure, which is fantastic. And you can also demine stuff. As a risky action, the engineer can disable any mine or trap terrain they move in contact with. If they fail, the mine blows up as described in each scenario. So if your opponent is the Sultanate and they're running sappers, you better be running these boys. They will have their own little private war over the course of the game. A lot of fun. Alrighty, who's next? Mechanized heavy infantry. These guys led to very fun times in the Discord with the whole malleable bones meme. But they're well-armored, large soldiers who wield the heavy weaponry of the company. Basically, these guys are imbued with all kinds of weird unguents and tinctures and prayers and stuff. And they're not, like, normal anymore. You know, they're all, like, extra large and capable of kind of wearing these extra big suits. So they're 6-inch movement, +1 ranged, +0 melee, -2 armor value. Remember, minus on armor value is good. And a Mechanized heavy infantry always wear light machine armor, which counts as reinforced armor. This is reflected in the cost and profile. This can be upgraded into machine armor, despite them not being elite, for plus 10 ducats, and it will also upgrade their base size from 32mm to 40mm. So remember that when you're modeling these guys. Mechanized heavy infantry can equip any weapons, blah, blah, blah. And they are strong. So they can, like, take machine guns and not have to fret about it. Just be able to wander around the place, just absolutely annihilating stuff. I really like them. I know a lot of people don't, but I do. I like the way they look. I enjoy the way they play. They bring some much needed. Run and gun is a strong word. And that's not a pun. That was just an accident. They bring some much needed presence, I feel, to an army that wants to invest heavily in the middle, in that kind of 16 to 12-inch range of effectiveness. These guys soften things up before that occurs and really help things to be extremely impactful when it gets to that. So yeah, I like them. Truthfully, I haven't played into them enough to really have figured out how I would deal with them, but I'll get there. Don't worry. The combat medic, one of the most beloved character designs in the game, if the thirsty comments are anything to go by. And yeah, sidetrack. The fact that there's thirsty comments about anything in fucking Trench Crusade is a damning indicator of what you all are like, folks. So these folks are really interesting. They are largely about healing, but they're very happy to kill. They take a modified Hippocratic oath that compels them to help any wounded soldiers with faith, no matter how dire the circumstances, or to dispatch any enemies of God, no matter how dire the circumstances. So they have 6-inch movement, plus 0 range, plus 0 melee, minus 1 armor, which is interesting little stat line. 65 ducats. They carry a medikit and a misericordia, and they have abilities finish the fallen. Due to their knowledge of anatomy and physiology, medics are experts at inflicting debilitating injuries and excruciating pain. Unless the target has the keyword demonic or black grail, add +1 dice to any injury rolls the medic makes in melee against opponents who are down. So they come in, they finish the job. They're very good at that kind of thing. And then expert medic adds +1 dice whenever they use their medikit to aid friendly models, which is great. So they can really be like an interesting swing factor in any fights that they are close to, which is interesting. So yeah, that's the models. New Antioch, as I said, I feel they want to be played within that kind of charge, assault, grenade, that like fire team. That's where they excel. They punctuate everything with doubling up, tripling up on their efficiencies, basically. And yes, there's the chance of getting like hard countered if you don't cancel out that possibility by killing stuff when you're meant to kill stuff. So go after the right targets, do the right thing at the right time. If you're not quite pulling that off, consider your Warband variant and how you really want to play them. So let's have a look at these. The Papal States Intervention Force, which is just a fucking dope name. So these guys, the Papal States, who all operate under the command of the Supreme Pontiff of Rome rather than the Duke. So these fuckers are like, we're Pope boys, not Duke boys. As sometimes dispatched to the front lines to perform a specific duty, such as hunting down and eliminating dangerous heretic leaders or recovering artifacts of great spiritual importance. My headcanon is these guys are kind of under the direct auspices of the Council of Saints, like whatever the saints drum up or decide is good, bad, evil, important, pertinent, whatever fucking way you want to describe it. These are the folks who will go out and do that. So they have rules, specialist forces. A Papal States Intervention Force Warband is recruited with 500 ducats and 11 glory points when creating a warband for a campaign. When recruiting a warband for a one-off battle, we recommend using 700 ducats and 15 glory points. For anyone who doesn't know, that's a fuckload of glory points. And we will talk about those and the glory items, you guessed it, in another video. We can't cover everything for all the warbands in these videos. I'm already pushing like 40 minutes with these things. And rendering them is killing me because of the little effects that I'm doing. So yeah, get off my butt. Swiss Guard. Up to 4 non-elite troopers can be upgraded into Swiss Guards at the cost of 5 ducats each. That makes them immune to fear. So yeah, if your mate is playing Black Grail, play these guys. Supreme Blessing. One model in the warband may carry the crucifix given by the Supreme Pontiff. This model can take further actions if it fails in an attempted risky action. Note that the action fails, but you are allowed to try any other action on your profile without losing the activation. So basically, they can do risky stuff, and if it doesn't work, YOLO. It's all good. And that can be very, very useful because there's important risky actions that we just talked about. So, Far From Home. They're not Spider-Man. They have the Papal Intervention Force, may have no trench moles. Can't have them. That's okay. They're going to be fine, I think. And then the Vatican's representative, Papal States Warband, must include a trench cleric, but does not have to include a lieutenant. I think you should always take a lieutenant because they're a very strong stat line. Alrighty. My boys, my Era Rangers Warband variant. So these guys are from Ireland, essentially. And the Emerald Isle has endured hunger and ravaged by the Black Grail, as well as a full-fledged invasion aimed at destroying the famed House of Manuscripts, where many of the holiest of texts are kept. That's right, nerds. We got fucking holy texts. So yeah, they're kind of a decentralized society now, and they specialize in a brutal form of guerrilla warfare. So being filled with a desire to kick ass, they roll off down New Antioch way, hook up with the Duke, and it literally says they're slightly kind of paganistic in some of their practices, but people just look the other way because they're quite good at kicking ass. These warriors adorn themselves with grisly trophies in the manner of their pagan ancestors, carrying skulls of the vanquished, much to the irritation of the church. So, I like that aspect of them. And their rules are fun, and I definitely plan on putting together a group for this. So the Fianna. Any shock troopers in an era warband can be made a member of the Fianna. The famed warrior hunters. They cost 60 ducats each and have the keywords skirmisher and infiltrator. Carnix. Your army can purchase a special carnix instead of a generic musical instrument. These bagpipes are identical to a musical instrument, except they can be carried by an elite model, and the model carrying them causes fear. Why? Because he can't play them for shit. Hit and run tactics. If a model of this warband uses the retreat action to move away from combat, enemies have a -1 dice penalty to hit rolls with their free attack. Berserker. Either your lieutenant or one of the Fianna can also be a berserker. This model is immune to fear and disregards any blood markers from any source. Berserkers never wear armor, though they can carry a trench shield. Add plus 15 ducats to the cost. Strong in faith. Era is a bastion of the church, with many famed warrior priests who travel to war. The warband may have up to 2 trench clerics, and they can choose either or instead of their standard ability, onward Christian soldiers. They can have loose organization. An Era warband may only have a single fire team, and their lieutenant has the skirmisher keyword instead of the on my command ability. Alright, you can't have any heavy infantry, and no model can carry a heavy weapon, which is kind of interesting. And their patron saint is always St. Patrick in a campaign. And then these are the abilities that the cleric can have instead of their usual one. Away serpents. Select an enemy within 12 inches of the priest and take a risky action. Targeting models on a 40mm or larger base incurs -1 dice penalty to this roll. If successful, the enemy model goes down immediately, slithering on its belly like a snake. So you have your combat medic swoop in and give it a stab. Arise and be healed. Select one friendly model within 3 inches of the priest and take a risky action. If successful, the warrior immediately stands up if down and loses up to D3 blood markers or infection markers or any combination of the two of your choice. Alrighty, the Sturmstruppen of the Free State of Prussia. I told you they have a lot of variants. So these guys can have up to 3 fire teams. They are masters of the grenade. Models of the Warband add 4 inches to all of their grenade weapons. Forward positions up to 2 shock troopers can have the keyword infiltrator at the cost of +10 ducats per model. Rapid assault at the cost of +5 ducats per model. Any shock trooper and lieutenant of this warband may add +1 dice to all their dash actions. Specialized equipment. They can take submachine guns, and automatic shotguns and automatic pistols are not limited to elites. They can't have grenade launchers, and they can only have 1 machine gun. And then troop selection, the warband must have at least 2 shock troopers and can have up to 8 in total. The warband can have 1 mechanized heavy infantry, 1 sniper priest, and no trench moles. And then apart from the mechanized heavy infantry and lieutenant, no model in the warband can go equipped with heavy or machine armor. I think, personally, that's the warband for the most unique playstyle, I think, in the game. If you want to give people something, and if you want to run the risk of being close and really taking advantage of those SMGs, of that 4-inch grenade throw, of your excessive fire team ability, that's the one to go with. And you can really demolish stuff if you play things right, and if you set up that double. Yeah, you can really get it done. Alrighty, and the Kingdom of Alba Assault Detachment. So these guys are from Scotland, and they have a kind of an interesting spot, I think, in the new Antioch setup. We'll talk more after I go through rules. Rampant charge. All models in the warband ignore the penalty for defended obstacles. Melee focused mechanized heavy infantry of this warband have +1 dice in melee instead of ranged attacks. So they'll have a +1 dice, take a big ass melee weapon with them. Highland machine armor. Models in this warband equipped with machine armor ignore the penalty to charging imposed by the armor. See what I mean? Highland strength. The lieutenant of the warband has the keyword strong. Strange supply. The warband has a limit of 1 for grenade launchers, submachine guns, machine guns, automatic shotguns, and sniper rifles. Bagpipes. 1 non-elite trooper can be made into a musician by buying a bagpipe at the cost of +15 ducats. In addition to the normal musical instrument rules, any member of the warband within 8 inches of the musician is not affected by the rules for fear. They're brave, which means they get +1 dice to morale tests. Claymore smiths and Alba warband can buy great swords for 7 ducats instead of the usual 12. And then light armored. Apart from the mechanized heavy infantry, no model in the warband can be equipped with heavy or machine armor. So yeah, that's New Antioch, whom are kind of unequivocally, for at least as far as Trench Crusade goes, the clean-cut good guys of the story. They don't have the kind of terrifying flagellantal edge of the Trench Pilgrims, but they do a lot of weird shit still with their little unguents and tinctures and turning people into things. And especially once it gets deep enough into the church's operations, things can get really scary, like strategic tacticians and things of that nature. So if you're looking for something that you can consider a good guy, these are probably it. They're probably the cleanest cut faction in the game. Painting wise, they're in kind of an interesting spot because it is a lot of armor. So if you enjoy painting armor, but you're not into the whole demonic evil aesthetic of the court or heretic legions and things like that, these are definitely your guys. So lots of like sharp edge highlights. If you're not into that, just straight up metallics will be absolutely fine, and you will be good to go. I'm gonna go out on a limb and guess the only exposed face you ever need to have will probably be the cleric and the lieutenant themselves, and that's it. So if you don't like the idea of faces, you're not going to have to paint too many of them either. And should you want to, you can just switch those heads out with something else from your collection, maybe. So yeah, that's New Antioch. If you're down with the Duke, let me know in the comment section below. There will only be one more of these videos to go. That will be posted up tomorrow, which will be Tuesday, which will be the day that the Kickstarter goes live. And I'm incredibly excited about it, and I can't wait to just throw down some money and support this goddamn thing. So yeah, as always, thank you so much for watching, folks. Goodbye.